Hi, welcome to another pastor study. This week we were looking at Psalm 125. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, they shall not be moved. There's so many comparisons we see in the Bible between God and especially Mount Zion, the mount that Jerusalem is set upon. And it's so striking when anytime, especially living in some place like Minnesota, having the opportunity to travel to the mountains and see just how massive and how distant they are. To think that they are so high up that snow is on the caps while you may be standing in 80, 90-degree heat. Just the impact of that the size and the magnitude can have by looking at those and thinking, this is in a sense used as an analogy for God, how massive He is, how unmoving He is, how solid and strong and never changing His reality is, and it's just looming over us all the time. Sometimes we even see that sort of in this idea of in judgment, where God is this brute fact that is never going to change, and ultimately we are going to have to reckon with him. But here we see the strength and the support that we have by having our foundation on that mountain. This is another of those Song of Ascents, these psalms on a journey to Jerusalem, pondering some of these. And a week ago, we talked about the high ground surrounding Jerusalem as being a dangerous place because that's where bandits would hide. That's where you'd have to make sure that you protect yourself as you traveled through. But that same ground, when you're going through it from one direction, is treacherous, but from the other direction, it provides safety and support. Use the story of Hannibal, the Carthaginian general attacking Rome and going over the Alps as sort of the exception that proves the rule of the protection of the mountains. But even with Hannibal, where he led his war elephants and his army across this long lost journey through the Alps and into Italy, he lost. He was defeated. That move extended the war. It provided a lot of problems for Rome. But the reality was, trying to move those elephants through the mountain, the stories tell that it was horribly difficult, that it had a great toll on the army, that it was a major problem. And so the feat was pretty extraordinary, but the result of the feat wasn't great for him. He still lost. And when it in a situation like that, when it comes time to retreat, you've got nowhere to go. So again, it's sort of the exception that proves the rule, but it proves the rule that those mountains are really strong protecting. Like I said, if you've got your back against the wall in a fight, you know that you're not going to get hit from behind unless somebody comes through the wall. So it's that strength, that protection, and to think that we as individuals, and especially we as a church, can have our foundation built on that mountain, and the confidence that that can give us, and the strength that we can gather from that, knowing that God is there, He's in control, He is protecting us, He is guiding us, He's never changing. So no matter what chaos is happening around us, no matter what attacks we're going through, no matter what difficulties we're dealing with, He's steady and sure. That perspective that sometimes we talk about, where we get locked into the perspective of this life, when the reality is we're called to a bigger perspective, an eternal perspective. And from an eternal standpoint, whatever we're going through is nothing. In the scope of thousands of years, coronavirus is nothing. It's something that many people point out that compared to other even pandemics of the past, most commonly you hear people talk about the Spanish flu, which killed millions and millions of people, the bubonic plague, the Black Plague, that killed up to 3/4 of Europe. This is nothing. Is this nothing? No, it's not. It's something. It's something that's worth noting, and that we need to take steps towards, and we have taken steps. But from the big picture, from that God's eye view perspective that we can have if we're founded on Him, the difficulties, the trials of this time, they're gone in a blink. And we'll be on to what God has in store for us in the future. Our calling isn't to be fearful. It's not to be terrified. It's not to be alarmist. It's to be steady and to be focused and to say, yeah, we've got these stay-at-home orders. We've got these mask mandates. We've got these new rules and these difficulties. But the reality is God is still in control. We still have a mission from Him that we're called to do, and we need to move forward and do it. And trust that foundation that we're on will remain steady, as it always has, and as we know it always will. That's going to stay steady even when everything else falls apart. And that's when I tied in that passage from Hebrews chapter 12, where it talks about everything that has been created will be shaken. Apart from being the inspiration to a really epic 80s Petra song, it's a complicated passage, but it's showing that even when everything else falls apart, even when everything else crumbles, Mount Zion won't shake. It won't be moved. It will, when everything else in the world falls apart, God is the one thing that won't. And so if we're founded on Him, if we're trusting in Him, if we are set on that mountain, then we can have that confidence to say we won't be shaken either. It's a wonderful promise to have. And it's one that we would do well to remind ourselves daily, to find those reminders. We talked about the memorial stones in Israel that Joshua and the priests picked out of the Jordan River, so that every time the children would walk past this pile of stones, they could ask their parents, why are these here? And the parents could remind them what God had done for them. And how we sometimes need that same reminder, reminding us that God has brought us through these trials. He'll bring us through future trials. He has a plan. He's in control. It's our job to be faithful to the calling that God has given us, both in the big picture and moment by moment. Who has He called us to talk to? What has He called us to say? How are we spreading the gospel to our friends, our loved ones, our neighbors, to the world that needs to hear it? To a world that needs to know that there is something solid that they can be founded on. They can have that confidence if they trust in the mountain, in God, and in Jesus as Lord and Savior. That's a message that we need to be sharing. So I pray that we would find our opportunity to, Hebrews 12:28. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. I pray that we would do that we would worship with reverence and awe, that we would be grateful for receiving that kingdom, and that we would be going and advancing that kingdom in the world around us. So thanks for taking the time to take a look at this. Next week, Sunday morning, Psalm 127, another short one, an interesting one, a little bit different. Should be interesting. Hope to see you there. Thanks so much. God bless.